Here we go, my new Pristine action with a $200 Outlier 7 PRC barrel. This is my first range trip where I'm going to stretch it out to distance, and I hope you'll join me for the experience. If you're curious of how 7 PRC performs at long range, then stick around because I think we've got a super fun video in the works here. Here we are, a 12-inch circle at 665 yards. What a hammer. Let's get into it. Hey there, and thanks for stopping by to check out my video. Now we've got some unseasonably warm weather out in Idaho right now, so I figured I'd capitalize on that opportunity to bring you some fresh, long-range content with my new 7 PRC ELR build. If you like the sounds of it, stick around. Now while it's warm, it is wet, muddy, and nasty out here. Everything's covered in mud. Myself, the rifle, cameras, tripods, the range buggy I used, the four-wheeler to get around out here, just nasty, but hope you enjoy the viewing experience. It's been a ton of fun filming it, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on how my first day with 7 PRC at 1,000 yards and beyond goes. With that, let's get right into it. 7 PRC and why I'm excited about it for an ELR caliber. So when you run the numbers through a calculator, it seems like an awesome performer. You're pushing a 180 to 190 grain bullet, very high BC, in the 0.4 G7 BC ballpark, at 2,900 to 3,000 feet per second. So very fast, very high BC means very capable at extreme long distance ranges. My expectation for the caliber is to be consistent out to a mile or 2,000 yards. I'm also thinking it's going to be lower recoil maybe than some of the 30 cal magnum options, and also cheaper to run. Less powder, maybe cheaper components. I think it's going to be a great extreme long range caliber. Now you got to let me know in the comments down below what you want to see me do with 7 PRC. I'm thinking maybe bring you along on my journey to hand load and find the bullet that really allows it to excel at distance, see how far we can push it consistently, and then maybe run it in an ELR match later this spring. Those are my thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours. Now what I'm most excited about here is this brand new rifle. Now if we have a great ELR caliber, we need a great ELR rifle to be able to shoot it out of so we can optimize the performance. And I think we have that here in this build that I put together earlier this week. So let's chat about the components here. The heart of it will be the Pristine action. Now this is going to be Pristine's new long action. If you've been around my channel, you know they've been a long-time supporter, and they sent out one of their short actions some time ago. And I have quite a number of rounds through it without any issues so far. The things Pristine is known for will be the butter smooth bolt throw. This thing actually has a roller bearing in the back side here to make this just so slick. That's still present in the long action, just like it is in the short action. The other thing, this long action includes a floating bolt head to allow you to swap between, say right now I have the .540 bolt face in it. You could run a .585. Say you want to shoot 338 Lapua Magnum or 300 Norma, some of those bigger cases. This long action will do it, and you can swap it out at the user level. Now this thing, the heart of it though, what I'm excited about and what allowed me to put together this build at home is the Savage prefit configuration. So really all you need is a torque wrench and a go, no-go gauge specific to the caliber that you're going to run, and you can install your own barrel. And that's exactly what I did at home the other night. So with some basic hand tools, some how-to videos, and an understanding of how rifles are put together, I built this rifle in about 3 hours. Really cool, and that Pristine action is what made it possible. Now the Pristine action is a Remington 700 footprint, which means it drops into this MDT ACC Elite chassis with no issues. So shout out to MDT for sending out the ACC Elite chassis as well as the single pull bipod. Now MDT, great company doing great things for the long range world, really into that competition space. And I think this ACC Elite chassis comes together and makes up a great competition build. Now this thing, a little bit of assembly required, but again, if you follow the instructions, it wasn't hard. Things I like about this chassis so far, the full-length Arken rail allows me to clip into my tripod with no issues. You can also install a weight kit in the handguard if you want more weight. I won't be doing that because this barrel is an absolute tank as it sits. So shout out to MDT. I do want to point out the pod knobs here on the single pull SkyPod. If you have a SkyPod, you know from the factory, these knobs are quite small. So if it's wet or cold, or you have gloves on, they can be hard to activate. So a company called PR Shooting Solutions is now making these pod knobs So much bigger and so much easier to access. Like here in the winter in Idaho, if it's cold and wet and gloves, boom, now I can deploy my legs without any issues. So if you need a set of pod knobs, check out PR Shooting Solutions and use code MULLETS to get yourself a little bit of a discount there. Now the heart of the rifle is going to be the barrel. So the barrel on this thing is going to be from Outlier. And if you're like me, you probably haven't heard of Outlier, or maybe you just recently are hearing of Outlier. Now what is Outlier? They're going to be known for providing extremely affordable barrels. As spec'd, this barrel is about $203, and we'll talk about how that is in just a little while. But the specs on the barrel, it's going to be a straight taper. There is no taper, there are no flutes. It is just a straight barrel. I think it weighs something like 6.2 or 6.5 pounds as configured. So very heavy, 1 1/8 twist, 26 inches long, and it includes the Outlier muzzle brake. So as configured, about $203. Very affordable. But the catch here is they have a 1 MOA promise. So Outlier is providing an extremely affordable barrel with a 1 MOA promise. So what I expect to do today is run some rounds through it and see if it lives up to that. These will be factory Hornady ammunition. Will it shoot 1 MOA? I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm super excited about it. But shout out to Outlier for sending out this barrel for me to thread into the Pristine action to put this rifle together. Finally, we're topped off with the Arken 7-35 EP5 scope. You've seen me use this in tons of content previously. This is a 35 power scope that's on the market for $600 to $800 depending on what sale is in place when you purchase. It's a ton of performance at a great price point, almost too good to be true. My experience so far with this scope in particular and all of my other Arken products have been quite good. And as you'll see in the video here today, we're going to stretch it out to 1,000 yards, hopefully with no issues. Now, before we move on and talk about ammo, if you find yourself interested in Arken products or the Outlier barrels and you want to pick some up for yourself, make sure when you go to their website, you use my code MULLETS at checkout to get yourself the best deal possible at that time, and then provide a little bit of a kickback here to me on the channel to help me keep creating this kind of content. So again, code MULLETS for Outlier or Arken will get you the best deal possible when you check out. Now, what are we going to run for ammo here in the video? Well, I want to run 2 different factory loads just to give you an idea of how a hunting bullet's going to run versus a match bullet. So the hunting load that we'll shoot will be the 175 ELDX from Hornady. This thing has a G7BC of something like 0.355. Again, very hunting focused. For the match load, we're going to shoot the Hornady 180 ELDM. This is going to be Hornady's match focus bullet. That's what the M denotes. 180 grains. Has a G7BC in the 0.400 range. So very high BC bullet, very high velocity, should perform well out to distance. I want to give a shout out to a longtime supporter, Ally Munitions, for providing the ammunition. If you find yourself in the market for some great ammo, factory or custom specific loads that they put together, or really any kind of shooting gear, check out Ally Munitions, longtime supporter making great products. So with that, let's move into the shooting portion. We'll move down to 100 yards. We'll take a look at 100-yard performance with both rounds, and then we'll push out on steel at distance. First up, let's take a close-up look at our 100-yard performance with the factory Hornady 180 ELDM load, as well as the 175 ELDX load. Now, there's a lot going on here on the paper, so let's chat about my results. And unfortunately, out of all the gear I carried out on the range buggy, I forgot my Sharpie. So I'm not able to write here on the paper, but I'll run through it from memory. Now, the other night, I'd put about 20 rounds through the rifle just to get a rough zero, foul the bore, went home, cleaned it up, and then came back out here. So first thing I did was fire these 2 rounds right here, 180 ELDMs. This was my first round. Cold, clean bore, low left after riding the range buggy. Not terrible, and then my second round comes up and hits the black dot. Now, as I spend more time with this rifle, we'll understand what does the cold bore do, what does the clean bore do, etc. This is just some data to get some fouling in the barrel before I shot my groups. Then I fired 10 round strings of each bullet broken into 2 groups. First up would be the 180 ELDM, which landed here on these 2 dots. So my first 5 round string is here. Now, before I talk about group size, let's chat about velocity. On this one, I got an average of 29.35 feet per second with a spread of 70 feet per second, which is huge. An SD of 20 to 21, which again is huge. And that's going to be kind of a challenge as we start to push out to the extreme distances. Certainly as I start to hand load, I want to clean that up and bring that down to a smaller number, but this is what we have for results. I bring that up because I believe that velocity spread actually impacted what we're seeing here on the paper for groups. So the first 5 rounds I fired landed here. Now overall, this group is 1.75 inches, so quite large for a precision bolt gun. But what I noticed while shooting, the round that flew out right here, this felt like a good shot. That thing is easy to shoot. I really feel like all of my shots were clean. This one ran extremely slow, 2891 feet per second, versus the rest of the rounds were up in the mid 2900s. So I'm thinking that low velocity might have caused this to fly out of the group and give us that 1.75 inch group. Because you can see the other 4 rounds that had decent velocity are roughly an inch. I then fired 5 more rounds immediately following it, and these 5 went into a 1-inch group. So very much in line with that Outlier promise of MOA guarantee. So overall, I believe the 180 ELDM is going to be a solid performer. Now I did not adjust my zero here. I then moved up to the 175 ELDX, and I didn't change my zero because I wanted to see where the point of impact shift would land before I made a change. My 175 ELDX for velocity was a bit slower, like 2898, but still had a pretty huge spread at about 60 feet per second with an SD in the ballpark of 20 to 21. Again, that's quite large, and I expect to hopefully clean that up as I start hand loading and get that number smaller so we can shoot more consistently out to distance. The 5 rounds here of the 175 ELDX landed into a group that's right at 1 inch, with the next 5 rounds immediately following it going into a group that I'd call 1.1, just a little bit over 1 inch. So very much in line with that 1 inch or 1 MOA promise from Outlier. So as you can see from a point of impact, from the 180s up to the 175s, they're going to land just a bit higher and off to the right. So as I shoot out to distance, I'm going to use the 180 0, which I cleaned up right here. So after firing all of these groups, I came down here, adjusted my point of impact to the right 1/10 and up 2 to 3, and fired these 5 rounds of the 180 ELDMs zeroed up. I'm going to zero out my turrets. This will be my zero. Note these rounds ran 2950 with an extreme spread of 15, so very nice performance here, and again a 1-inch group. So I believe the velocity was solid, 2950 out of the 180s, 2900 out of the 175s is a bit slow. Accuracy-wise, the rifle seems to be a 1 MOA performer, and I expect when I swap over to hand loads to clean that up and make her shoot even smaller with smaller SDs and extreme spread so we can push out to distance. But when we swap over from the 180s, which will be my zero, to the 175s, we'll remember to bump left probably 1/10 and down 2/10 to zero that up to get the point of impact in line with where my zero is at. So with that, let's push out on steel at distance. All right, let's see how she performs out at distance. First off, how sweet is this new shooting spot I found? It's kind of a rock outcropping, allows me to set up my tripod and shoot some very practical type positions. So we're set up here, very comfortable position. I'm 665 yards from my targets. Downrange, I've put up a 12-inch circle on the left and a 2/3 zipstick on the right. I thought it'd be fun to shoot a handful of rounds of the ELDX first, and then the ELDM to see how we can connect out there. So the ELDX had something like a .355 G7 BC coming out of the True Ballistic Chronograph, which calls for 3.6 mils that I will dial on. But I'm only going to dial on 3.3 because remember there was a slight point of impact change between the 180s and the 175s, and I'm going to dial left 0.1. With that, let's just hold dead on that 12-inch plate, see what happens. Impact. 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 Nice little group centered up. Impact. Impact. So that's 5 for 5 with the 175. How about we try the 180? Now it's calling for 3.3, so a little bit flatter shooting, and I'll come back to my zero. And just like that, we're loaded up with the 180s. Let's see how she shoots. Pack. 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 I believe that was just off the upper left, kind of the 10 o'clock. Now it's off the left edge. Let's throw one more in there. Might have had a little wind pick up. And there I was, centered up to make that impact. So seems like the 180s are flying a little bit flatter out here at 665 yards. I hope you can see the trigger cam because this thing is so soft shooting off this tripod. Really fun. Let's push further. Now I've moved back to 1,010 yards, and let's see how she performs on the 2/3 zip stick. First up, we'll shoot the 180 ELDM, which is calling for 6.5 mils that I've dialed on. Windage wise, based on what we were seeing there at 665, I'm just going to hold dead up and see what happens. Okay, just off the right edge. So let's go left. Call it like a point 3 or 4. Too aggressive. Pack. 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 Why don't we try a couple on the 12-inch plate? We'll do the same left hold. Impact. First round, 12-inch plate at 1,010 yards. Impact. That's too easy. Now we'll try the 175. Now I've got the 175s loaded up. The calculator's calling for 7 mils, but I'm going to dial on 6.8, just given that slight difference in 0. And here we go, 1,010. Let's start on the 2/3 zip stick. And I'm going to go with a similar wind hold, just kind of left, 0.25 or so. Impact. Impact. Let's try the 12-inch circle. Impact. Impact. Man. So it seems like the 175 and the 180 are hammering here at 1,010. A little bit of drop difference there given the difference in BC and velocity, but maybe let's push out a little bit further, see how we fare out there. Here we go, a little bit further. I just ran down and set up my full-size zip stick out there. We're at the 1,400 yard line with the 180s, which we'll shoot first. Calling for 11.1 mils of elevation, which I've dialed on. And we will favor well, let's just go dead on and see where it lands. Okay, so just off the right edge. impact, upper left shoulder. Go. Had to get my rear bag situated in my bipod. Impact. Back. Impact. How sick is that? 4 in a row, 1,400 yards. Now let's try the 175. Okay, so the 175 is calling for 12.2, but I'm only dialing on 12 because of the zero shift. And we'll do the same wind hold. Just off the right edge. Call that like 0.5. Impact. 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 I think those are all on the upper edge of the plate. You'll have to let me know in the comments, but impact. Wowzers. This thing is hammering. 1,400 yards. We just went 8 for 10. 4 with the 180s, 4 with the 175s. As you can see out there at that distance, it's about a mil difference in flight. Now with that, I'm not going to stretch out any further. It's an absolute mud hole out here. It's nasty today. So let's go ahead and wrap up, and I'll give you my initial impressions with the 7 PRC Outlier barrel and the Pristine action. So there you have it, a look at my first range trip with 7 PRC to 1,000 yards and beyond using a $200 Outlier barrel. You got to let me know in the comments down below, what did you think about the performance of 7 PRC out to 1,400 yards, and in particular that Outlier barrel. Now while you're doing that, I'll chat about my experiences running this rig beyond 1,000 yards. First up, we moved down to the 100-yard line where we saw, I felt like, impressive performance. Certainly that first 5-round group of the 180 had the 1 round that flew low and right out of the group, but it had lower velocity. If you take that out, those other 4 rounds were an MOA or better. The next 5 rounds were 1 MOA, exactly in line with that Outlier promise. The one thing I noticed though, that 180 ELDM load from Hornady, that velocity spread was pretty huge. That's something I want to clean up in some hand loading down the road. Then I moved up, shot the 175s, again, 10 rounds. Both of those went into groups that were right at 1 inch. So one of them was basically 1 inch perfectly. The next one was probably 1.1. Velocity was a little bit slower though, at 28.97. I was expecting that 175 to be pushing 3,000 feet per second. So again, when I start hand loading, I'm going to be chasing a little bit higher velocity, and I'm really hoping to get that extreme spread and standard deviation lower so that I can push out to a mile and beyond without crazy high and low flyers. So 100-yard performance, I think there's a ton of great potential there. I do believe the Outlier so far is living up to their 1 MOA promise. Then we moved out to 650 yards and had no problems connecting on that 12-inch circle from kind of a practical field position off of my tripod. I want to say it was 3.3 and 3.6 mils of elevation, so about 1 minute of difference at 650 yards between the hunting bullet and the match bullet. Nothing crazy. Both had no problems connecting. A 12-inch plate, that's very much a vital zone in a hunting shot at 650 yards. Then we moved out to 1,000 yards and had just unbelievable performance. 2/3 IPSC was no issue. Then we moved over to the 12-inch circle and connected with both the hunting load and the match load. And from what I remember, we were in the 6.5 mils and 7 mil ballpark. So very flat out to 1,000 yards, exactly what I was expecting out of 7 PRC. And then we pushed out to the full-size IPSC at 1,400 yards, where in total we had 8 impacts out of 10 shots. 4 with the hunting 175 ELDX and 4 with the match 180 ELDM. I tell you what, for an initial range trip out to 1,400 yards with the hit percent that we had, I am super pumped. Yes, it's a low wind day, but I tell you what, that's some great performance with factory ammo and a $200 barrel. Let me know what you think. At 1,400 yards, we were starting to see about a mil difference of drop between the 175 and the 180. So that BC difference and velocity difference was showing up. Nothing extreme. And as you saw in the video, that 175 ELDX hunting load is very capable out to some pretty crazy distances. So again, let me know what you think. Now with that, let's go ahead and wrap up with a summary. I tell you what, I'm super excited about 7 PRC. My initial experience is very good. I do believe there's a ton of potential there. Very low recoiling. Yes, this is a very heavy rifle with that thick barrel, but it barely moves under recoil, whether it was off the tripod or prone. Very controllable rifle to shoot. I think there's some potential there to push this thing out to 2,000 yards with no issue. Again, let me know in the comments down below if you want to see me do that. Now finally, I hope you enjoyed the look at my first day out here with 7 PRC and what it's capable of, making 1,400 yards look easy. If you want to see more content like this, let me know in the comments, but I also want to ask, if you've made it this far, help me grow this channel. Like this video, subscribe. I'm on a mission to get to 100,000 subscribers, and if you're watching this and not subscribed, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you're in line for my next video drop. And those of you that have recently come on board to support my channel, I really appreciate it. It means a ton. I have so much fresh content planned for 2025. I cannot wait to get it in front of you. So with that, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you'll stick around to join me in my next one.